Righteous Felon Craft Jerky is the official jerky of BellyUpSports. For over a decade, Righteous Felon Craft Jerky has led the American meat snack revolution by concocting delicious, adventurous, U.S.-sourced jerky recipes for uncompromising carnivores across the country. With 15 different flavors to choose from, Righteous Felon has all jerky lovers covered, and by using promo code BELLYUP, you will get 15% off your purchase at RighteousFelon.com. Do your taste buds a favor today and rip into a bag of Righteous Felon jerky.
The U.S. men's national team, the games have passed. We have some time to have an assessment and think of what we just watched. So, obviously, there was two friendlies that the U.S. men's national team played. The first one was against Panama in Austin, Texas. I will say Austin showed up very well. I think it was a very good crowd, over there for the U.S. men's national team. It was also Hispanic Heritage Night. At least that's what the U.S. men's national team was promoting. But yes, USA beat Panama 2-0, 2-0. USA had 55% of the possession. USA had 11 shots for them, were on target. The goals came by Yunus Musa in the 49th minute, which is his first U.S. men's national team goal. Way to have your first U.S. men's national team goal on the debut of your new coach, Mauricio Pochettino. And then Ricardo Pepi comes in stoppage time to score the nail in the coffin in the 94th minute. The lineup was pretty unique. It was a 3-4-2-1 formation, utilizing two cams and essentially having two wingbacks, essentially. So I think like in the attacking, when they were on the attack, the formation would be the 3-4-2-1 formation. But then once they're in defense, it kind of goes to a back five. But the Matt Turner was goalkeeper. He actually was goalkeeper for both games, so no Zach Steffen, so that was interesting. The back line, at least for the 3-4-2-1 formation, was Tim Ream, Mark McKenzie, and Joe Scally being labeled as a center back for this formation. In the midfield, playing wing back was Anthony Robinson, and Yunus Musa playing essentially the other wing back. We have Aiden Morris, Gianluca Busio playing as the center midfielders, and the two cams up top was Christian Pulisic and Brandon Aronson. Not necessarily different for Christian Pulisic. Pulisic has played the cam a few times over at AC Milan, so not necessarily a unique position. Brandon Aronson, I think I prefer him more on the wing for his athleticism, but I think he has played the cam a few times. But just a unique setup. And then at forward, we had Josh Sargent being the starting forward. The subs that came into this game was Tanner Tessman, Christopher Lunn, Alejandro Zendejas, Ricardo Pepi, Haji Wright, and Malik Tillman. I think this game wasn't too crazy, but you beat the team you're supposed to be. You're supposed to be Panama, and I think aside from that was a good performance, a good debut. It's a win. Not the prettiest of wins, but that's what CONCACAF is. CONCACAF isn't about winning pretty, it's about winning ugly. And I think they did enough on the defensive side to keep themselves in the game, and they got 2 goals in the second half to solidify I would say a pretty good defensive performance. So I mean there is that. So that's the first game. The next game, which was at Mexico in Guadalajara, I believe the stadium of Chivas. The Guadalajara was the stadium, which I will say the atmosphere, unlike any other. I think I'll say this, as even though I'm not a Mexico supporter, I think it was good that Mexico was able to have a home game in Mexico. And I understand that Mexico has still a very good crowd when they come to the U.S., specifically in the Texas, California, Arizona markets, and Chicago as well. I understand that. I just think that there's just something different when it comes to playing in Mexico. And I think that we need to see more of that for Mexico. I think that to truly feel the Mexico crowd, I think and once again, not saying that the Mexicans in the USA are not the same type of Mexicans in Mexico, but I feel like it's just different, right? To play in your home country, and so I honestly will give props to Mexico for that, and I feel like was a huge factor for them in this game because USA did lose 2-0, 2-0 to Mexico. USA had 53% of the possession. USA had total of 5 shots. 1 was on target. The goals came from Raul Jimenez on the 22nd minute, which I think we're starting to see some potential, not potential with Raul Jimenez, but we're starting to see the guy that we were hoping to see a few years ago. Obviously, he got dinged up with a really bad injury while he was at Wolves. And I think he's starting to find himself a little bit more over at Fulham. And before everyone says I'm a Mexico hater, I'm not. I've been a real big fan of Raul Jimenez for quite a long time. He's a guy that I use a lot on when in FIFA, or EA Sports. I never really use him on EA Sports FC, but when he was in his America days, when he played for Benfica and Atletico Madrid, I did use Raul Jimenez a lot. He was a really good striker. I got him to develop pretty good in those games. So I rate Raul Jimenez a lot, and so for me it's great to see him perform, even though it's against my country. But yeah, scores a free kick. I think validation, I think, gives you some senior leadership as well. I think maybe Santi Jimenez needs to take a step back. I don't think so too much, but I do think Raul Jimenez is a much needed veteran for Mexico. And the other goal was by Chino Huerta in the 49th minute, which was really, I mean, the nail was Raul Jimenez scoring that free kick. It really, you could just see the atmosphere just completely insane. And then Cesar Huerta, the 49th minute, which is the dagger. The game pretty much washed the game. USA, yeah, if you really think about it, 5 shots in the first, and 5 shots in this game against Mexico, and then 11 shots. Possession wise, it's very 50-50 whenever they go up against. Possession is not an important statistic, by the way. I just point that out in these recaps. But the shots, man, like they're not being clinical when it comes down to it. All right, but the formation for this one was a 4-3-2-1 formation, still sticking with the 2 cams in this formation. So we did not see the 4-2-3-1 formation that Pochettino normally uses, and we didn't see the 4-3-3 formation. And I think at least the reason behind not using those formations came from the fact that we just didn't have the players that Pochettino would use those formations for. Obviously, Timothy Weah out with injury, was injured. So Gino Dest is still going to be out for a while. Cameron Carter-Vickers was out. Tyler Adams, that's a question mark. Johnny Cardozo, I think Johnny Cardozo starts over Adams, but that's just my opinion. But you didn't have Johnny Cardozo, you didn't have Balogun. You lost, and I'm not trying to use this as an excuse as to why USA lost, because once again, you put the team out on the field. The team that's on the field, that's the team that's representing the US. And you can argue for Mexico, they did some different things in this call up, man. As much as you want to be mad at the US for not winning, Mexico, it's funny because you want Mexico to zig. You want Mexico to zag instead of zig. And let me see, because like the Mexico call up, I think initially a lot of people were not necessarily too happy about the Mexico October call up. I'm trying to see the Mexico national team, their October call up. We'll just look at the roster. For goalkeeper, because the unique thing about this call up was that you brought back Memo Ochoa, right? You bring Raul Jimenez. So you're starting to see some of the older guys, right? And so it was interesting, right? But obviously you had Malagon. He's starting. Honestly, like a pretty decent form lineup that they had. Raul Jimenez, obviously, Chino Huerta, who continues being better. I think one day hopefully soon he goes to Europe, or I think he is in Europe. I thought he was in Europe. Let me see. Chino Huerta. Is he still with Pumas? He Club Universidad Nacional. That should be Pumas, right? Yeah, that's Pumas. So yeah, he still plays with Pumas. So I know he was linked to like Europe, but I would love to see him in Europe. Oberlin Pineda, another name that I'm very familiar, and I'm actually pretty high on Pineda as well. I think he's a really good player. He plays right now with AEK Athens. I think he's also a pretty good player. Alvarado, I think, is very sneaky good. Andres Guardado. This is his retirement from the Mexican national team. They called him back up. It's to me when I saw this Mexico team, it was a little bit interesting, right? But I think you need that mix of the old with the new at the same time. So it was a lot of puzzling. At least some people found it puzzling with the Mexican national team call up, but I think aside from that, was pretty good. Was a pretty good team. I think definitely found some identity over in Chivas. Obviously, they had a friendly against Valencia. It was a draw, interesting draw. But still, I mean, these are friendlies. At the end of the day, this is a lot of just testing things out, seeing what works. Especially because the next call up there's matters a little more because there's I guess quarterfinals, if you will. But anyways, I think and maybe this isn't necessarily the real Mexico just yet, but for them to get a result, obviously positive for them. But yeah, USA just didn't have the mentality for the attack wise. You can say what you want defensively, but I think could have been more goals. I think so. I honestly think it could have been a lot more goals for Mexico. But the formation, like I said, is a 4-3-2-1 formation, sticking with the dual cams. Matt Turner was goalkeeper. The back line was Anthony Robinson, Tim Ream, Miles Robinson, and Joe Scally. I'm gonna say this: Tim Ream. Like I said, I think if we were able to have Cameron Carter-Vickers and Chris Richards, another injured player. Once again, this isn't an excuse. You play who's on the field. You play who's on the field, who's available. You play them. I think we're just learning that the depth-wise of the U.S. men's national team is limited. And so Tim Ream, I think coming off the bench isn't a bad idea, or being a kind of a raw locker room guy. Still not a bad option to bring him in. But I think as far as his chances of the 2026 World Cup, yeah, not thinking it's going to happen. Miles Robinson, this dude should not be getting called up. That's just me. That's just my opinion on that one. Like I said, the midfield, we had Yunus Musa, Gianluca Busio, and Aiden Morris playing kind of the CMs. And then the two cams was Brendan Aronson and Malik Tillman. Once again, forward was Josh Sargent. There was just no bark and no bite from this attack. I am not going to lie. It was pretty fucking dead. So that needs to be better. That just overall needs to be better. The subs that came in was Christopher Lund, Tanner Tespin, Austin Trusty, Alejandro Zendejas, Haji Wright, and Brandon Vasquez. But I mean, at the end of it all, was not impactful. And I mean, so this is where the controversy comes in this game. We're talking about a friendly, by the way. I just want to remind you that this is a friendly, and no excuse on this one. But it was a friendly. Christian Pulisic and a few other players had the option to return to their clubs, and which led to a lot of outrage of that. Of course, Alexi Lawless has to talk about this, right? And I get it. Even though it is a friendly, we are talking about Mexico, and at the end of the day, you don't necessarily want to lose to Mexico, friendly or not. You want to play them at your best. Do I feel if you had Christian Pulisic, Ricardo Pepi, Weston McKennie didn't even play in the Panama game. So I don't know if he would have played. Those are the three names that I think of off the top of my head. I'm trying to think of anybody else, but I think that at least those are the three big ones for me. to get those guys to be sent back. I think maybe Pulisic could have been impactful in the attack. I mean, obviously he's always impactful on the attack. I think what we lost when not having Weston McKennie is someone to be that dog. Because this lineup, I'm not gonna lie to you, had no fucking dog in them. No dog in them. Because when Zendejas, when he got bodied and he had that face to face with that Mexican player, nobody really was there for him. And I mean, you could probably give Haji Rice some credit, but he got not mollywop. He got brought down. So, and me, that's not a good look, especially in these CONCACAF games. It's gonna get physical. It's gonna get rough, and if you don't have your teammates back, that's not a good look either. Zendejas is used to that kind of environment because he plays in Liga MX. But for nobody, and I mean nobody, coming in with any sort of intensity in that moment was alarming to me, And I think Weston McKennie would have been that player. I think Timothy Weah would have been that player because those guys are dogs. And I think, maybe I'm crazy, maybe I'm dumb, but you need to have some dogs on your team. And we didn't have any dogs in this one. And that's why, I felt that was kind of what didn't help with the no bark, no bite. Like there was no like oomph in the attack, and I think that's my bigger complaint. Does that happen with Christian Pulisic? No, I mean Pulisic is a tough guy. I'll give him that. But in that scenario, I think of more of a Weston McKennie to come in and be. Even a fucking Mad Meow's good. Say what you want, but that dude's a fucking dog. And so, like, I think that those are, like, those things you need. You need those kind of things, especially when you're going into Mexico, and a team that's going to pound, that's going to beat you up in that field. Like, for those 90 minutes, it's the Thunderdome. And you didn't have anybody to really fight back with Zendejas. And so I think that was rough. But like I said, the outrage came from the whole fact that Pulisic was given the option to return to his camp, which, I mean, apparently AC Milan was very gracious that Pochettino did that. But obviously the Americans aren't going to be happy with that at all. If I had to essentially pick how I felt about this call-up, I would say wasn't the best, but it wasn't the worst at the same time. You know what? I think Filippo over at Tactical Manager said it the best. This wasn't great, but hopefully it's, when we see the next call up, how do they follow up to this? Because right now it isn't terrible, but it wasn't great either. If they follow up and hopefully have a full healthy call up where we have all our guys there and we see what this team really is capable of. Now, when we look at those first two friendlies, it's like it's not as bad as we think. We see what happens when our actual squad is on the field. And so I like to think of it like that as well. So if I just say, wasn't the worst, but it wasn't the best either. I think that's how I'm going to summarize the U.S. men's national team call-up for October.